You ever had this conversation with your significant other? Honey, yeah, let's talk about the finances. The thing is, we've got too much cash and we're just going to have to start buying more stuff. Of course not, because that's not how it goes. At least not in 2012. Money is a tough topic. It's awkward, it's personal, and it causes huge fights. And if you ask Ali Velshi, it's because money is a language that we need to learn how to speak better, and we need to understand how men and women speak it differently. Ali is the chief business correspondent on CNN.
The economy still is the #1 issue, but how it manifests in different towns is entirely different.
Jon Stewart calls him H-Pod, or the hairless prophet of doom. But Ali's roots are right here in Canada. Grew up in Toronto, where his dad became the first Indian Canadian elected to the Ontario legislature. Ali worked as a reporter in local Toronto news, then signed on as the business anchor with CNN, where he's become an expert at answering our questions about money. Like, will the economy even get better? He addresses all this and the language of men and women with money in this new book written with his TV wife, Christine Romans.
Let me tell you something about Ali. He's one of those people that doesn't see the value of saving money.
No, I like my money to make money for me.
The book is called How to Speak Money, and with economic recovery ever uncertain, it's the perfect time to get Ali back in the red chair.
Well, please welcome back to the show our friend Ali Velshi.
Hey, bud.
Good to see you.
How are you, man?
Very good. What's going on?
Good to see you again. I'm well. I'm well. Where'd this go, man?
Well, listen, I've been listening to you talk about the doom of the economy that I was preparing myself for the eventual fallout.
No, the danger, what you have to do is prepare yourself when things get really bad, which is what I've been doing. Stocking up.
You look great.
I go
you
for
look great.
days without food.
You look great. It's a different economic time than it was, let's say, the last time you were here?
It's, well, we have a whole lot less panic than we had the last time. I mean, things are getting better. There's no question. Look, things were never as bad here in Canada as they were south of the border, but it doesn't really matter whether it's comparatively worse. If you've lost a job or you're feeling bad, you know, that's what matters. Things are getting better.
Well, and the thing is, though, you keep hearing about things getting a little bit better for the people who are involved in the stock market and in that world, but there aren't jobs, man. That's the problem.
That is the intractable problem of our time.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. We've worked for 75 years in making the middle class bigger, you know, and narrowing the gap between the rich and the poor, and all of a sudden it's like we hit the rewind button 3 years ago, and we've now got, you know, differentiation in classes and bifurcation in society. We have to fix that. That's not a good problem.
Well, but why? Like, we know why we need to fix it. It's just the people who have this small group of people that have all this money have no interest in fixing it, because then they would have to give something up.
Sometimes that's the case, but sometimes nobody wants to give up something else sometimes for the greater good if it's going to cost them. But we need leadership, political leadership, that says this is what we have to do. It's actually better if you have to give something up so that the society as a whole benefits. It's going to be better for you. Crime will be lower. Properties will be more valuable. People will be employed. Society will just generally be better. And we need to start thinking that way. I think we do a better job of thinking that way in Canada than we do right now in the United States. You've heard the conversations. It does sound some days like class warfare.
Sure. No one wants to focus on cause, because if you focus on cause, you sound like a socialist.
Right.
And no one wants to focus on cause.
But we have to understand these causes, and then we have to use very specific solutions to fix them. And the interesting thing, George, is that around the world, various countries have solved many of the problems that we need to come together and use. And so whether it's in Canada or in the United States, we have to not worry so much about homegrown solutions. We need to find other people's solutions and say, this is how you have a great digital society. This is how you have a great public education system. This is how your healthcare system needs to work. And we know what it takes to make great societies.
Well, can you do that with political ideology at play? The ideology does not support that kind of approach. The ideology is let the free market do what the free market does.
But ideology shouldn't be running our political system. Ideology exists, and then politicians should be those people who say, I have the ability to negotiate, to arrive at compromise and deals, and elect me, and I'll go and make deals with people whose ideology might be different. So politicians should be this rare breed of people who understand ideology, but are able to come to compromise. What we're having now increasingly in politics in Western democracies, and America is a very clear example of this, is the idea that you get elected to go there to defend your position and not budge an inch. That is very dangerous. It's not the ideology, it's the practice of politics that seems to be broken.
Yeah, the lack of governing. Does it matter who wins down there the next? Will it change the economy?
Well, the economic cycle, the business cycle, the cycle of recessions and growth is bigger than the presidency. It's bigger than political parties, but you can affect it on the margins. And the biggest thing about the economy is it's not a science, it's not a chemical reaction, it's how people feel and how they behave. And people behave differently if they have greater faith in government. So what we're going through is almost a global sense of people don't trust their governments. That's not a Democrat or Republican thing or a liberal and conservative thing. It's people don't trust their governments. So that's where, on the margin, the person who becomes president or the people who get elected to Congress or Parliament can make a difference. If you have faith that these people will do their job, get organized, and not stand in the way of your success, you don't even have to make it better. Just get out of the way.
How to speak money. When did money become a language?
Well, here, the way it isn't a language is that if I were talking to you and you spoke a different language than I did, but I liked you, I wanted to get to know you, or I had business to do with you, I'd figure out a way to make it work.
Yeah.
With money, if you're with somebody under your own roof, your spouse, your kids, your parents, your siblings, they may have a different experience with money than you do, and you get your back up. Now I'm going to prove to you why you're wrong. And we find that a lot of people, a lot of families can't move forward because they're fighting amongst themselves about money and what the goals are and what their practices should be. So we're trying to get you to understand that there's a very valid reason that your partner, your wife, your husband may see money differently because of their experience or their background. And if you understand that better, you can have a better conversation with them.
What you guys talk about, which is really interesting, is that men and women are simply different about how they approach money.
They are. They are, and there have been studies that show that, and frankly, most men and women will tell you that. Now, some men have the characteristics that we identify with women, and some women have the characteristics, and some relationships are swapped. But generally speaking, women have this sense of having responsibility not just for their careers, but for their family and the household. So if you look at the whole picture, they have to do a little more research before they make decisions, and they tend to prefer those decisions to be made in context, which by definition makes them more conservative investors. Right. Guys want to know how they can double their money. Guys don't want to really read books about it. They might read an auto manual or the Home Depot book, but generally speaking, they want to figure out a quick fix.
Dude, I got a guy in Vegas who, depending on how the Patriots are doing, can double your money. Right. Right. It can be done.
That doesn't generally appeal to a woman, particularly a woman in a relationship with a family and a household.
Right. Fair enough.
So we need to. That's really fundamental. And you know, we talk about it. And there were surveys that come out that talk about how people are different and how they argue and how marriages break up over this. But it's very sad. These discussions are not silly. They're fundamental, particularly when somebody's lost a job or they're not earning enough, and a man who thinks he's supposed to be earning understands that he doesn't have that job, and the woman doesn't feel appreciated for all the work she does, and then coming home and taking care of the kids and the household. These money arguments really break families up, and we want to try and stop that.
Now, in your own life, your partner also has a big financial brain, right? So how do you guys follow along with that pattern?
That's an interesting story. My wife runs a hedge fund, and she's definitely the smarter of the two of us. And more importantly, she's the more organized and the more disciplined. Right. So in my house, just believe it or not, I'm the chief business correspondent for CNN, but I'm not actually the money driver in my house.
Your house?
I don't make the decisions.
What do you mean?
Yeah, no, it's
this is what you do.
I know, but my wife's that much better, and frankly, so is Christine. Christine's much more conservative than I. She's my TV wife.
Right, your day wife.
And then you're right.
Your day wife.
I have an evening and weekend wife as well.
There are some who say that the language of money we spoke before is just never going to be the language we speak. And we had a great, marketing brain on the show, Seth Coden, and we were just talking about the economy. Seth, actually, we'll play it for you.
Recession is a forever recession. There's a cyclical recession that comes and goes, but there's this other thing, and it's the end of the industrial age. It lasted for 80 years. For 80 years, you got a job, you did what you were told, you retired. And good people could make above average pay for average work. And it ended. And so 2012 is not going to be more of the same. It's going to be worse of the same in that the industrial age is going away and a new thing is going to take its place.
Therein lies the rub, right?
Yeah, he's very right. I mean, the Industrial Revolution lifted people out of this general trend of being a little bit better off, or maybe not better off than your parents, into this idea that hard work and industry would open all roads for you. That is different because America and Canada both grew on the backs of manufacturing. And those jobs have gone away, and they are not coming back no matter what politicians tell you.
Cars need to be built. Why aren't they built here, all of them? Things need to get manufactured. Right. Everything says made in China on the back. Right. Why can't they come back? Is there like a practical reason why these jobs won't come back?
It's just the value that you can pay people in other countries. Look, we've gone through this whole thing with Apple and Foxconn and finding out that people don't get paid what you think. I mean, what did we think? Did we think the iPads and iPhones were being made in Cincinnati? No, they're not. They're being made in China by people who don't have the living standards and working standards that we have, and it's a lot cheaper than if you make it here.
I'm not in principle opposed to the concept of outsourcing, because if you want other want cultures
Sure,
to
you have to
succeed.
participate, yeah.
Yeah, you want to help build middle classes
Sure.
everywhere. But is there an either-or proposition where to build another country, it will be at your own suffering?
No, I think it's just that economies are complicated, and when you make decisions, they have unintended consequences 15 or 20 years down the road.
Right.
All of these decisions have had, when America deregulated its banks, sounded fantastic. 15 years later, we have a crash almost as big as the Great Depression. We have the smarts, we have the ability to model these things out and say, this is the effect of what we are going to do. But you have to be able to tell your constituents that, to say, I know this will feel really good for you this year and next year. It's not about this year and next year. It's about 15 years and 20 years. You think I can win an election with that platform? No, I don't think so.
No way. Stick around. We're going to have more of a conversation with Ali, but we're going to throw some music and money into this mix. We'll be right back. Welcome back.
Where do you get this stuff?
That's you at 2 years old.
I've never seen that. I mean, I know that was me.
Yeah.
I could tell from the clumsiness.
I liked in that clip because as you were kind of tumbling over like a 2-year-old, what do you know, your family was there trying to pick you up, and you fall and they keep picking you up, and it was this idea of togetherness. It was a really, like, everybody was around you,
That's
right?
it. We're going to have to help this guy make it.
Were those lessons you learned as a kid, that it was not just about you, but it was about helping other people?
Yeah, well, look, I came from a big family, and it was one of those things where everybody was always around, and neighbors. My family was Indian, and everybody was always around, and then my best friend 2 doors down was Italian, and everybody was always around, and we were just constantly eating and helping people out, and everybody's business was your business.
Right.
And so the idea that when somebody had a problem, you as a collective try and work it out is sort of what I try to do. We're all our brother's keeper. In the book, I say we have a 70-10-10-10 rule, which means live on 70% of your take-home pay, save 10%, invest 10%, and give 10% to charity. You know,
you're
take care of your
tithing.
Yeah, let's forget about it being religious. Let's actually make it part of what we do, because we are our brother's keeper. And that's when it comes down to making decisions about entitlements and benefits that people get, and getting angry that people get unemployment. This is our responsibility. We are still a village. This may be a village that we're in of 6 million people. Yeah. It's still a village, and when we stop being our brother's keeper, we lose a little bit of ourselves.
Now, financial literacy you learned, I suppose, at a young age. For a lot of us, we learn financial literacy through music and pop culture. So I wanted to get you to apply your financial expertise to some key moments. So we all know back in '97, Biggie, the Notorious B.I.G., basically put it into our heads that more money, more problems. Is that true? It's like the more money we come across, the more problems we see.
It does complicate it. Here's what it is. It's the search for more money gives you more problems. My parents live here in Toronto in the very same house that I grew up in, the one that you saw there. Right. They still live in that house. It wasn't about getting a bigger house because other people did. And it's that quest for more money and more houses and more cars and better stuff that causes you to try and keep up with the Joneses, as opposed to simply living the best you can with what you've got. Again, living beneath your means. It is so foreign to us, but it would help if it weren't. You know, 32 years before Biggie uttered those famous lyrics, Bob Dylan, and I think what might be my favorite, I know you're a big music fan, my favorite Dylan song is It's All Right, Ma, I'm Only Bleeding, says, money doesn't always talk, it swears. Right. Is that true? Well, we've certainly learned that in the last few years, haven't we? And that's part of the reason, you know, we wrote the book, because, you know, 10 years ago, stock markets kept going up, house prices kept going up, your wages kept going up, unemployment was really low. You had margin for error. You didn't actually have to pay attention to your money. And then sometime in 2008, it swore. Yeah. And now you have no margin for error. Now we all have to understand that if you want your standard of living to stay the same or improve, you actually have to do some work. What do you think is money's favorite swear word? Can we say that? Is this... You can say whatever you want. Is this edited? Yeah, no, we can. Is this live? We'll see. No, I'm not saying it. I like staying employed and coming back on your show. You can always come back. Poor man's roses, Patsy Cline. I must make up my mind today what to have, what to hold. A poor man's roses or a rich man's gold. Is that really about living on your means? Well, it is. And the thing to take away from that is this whole idea of overextending yourself. You know, Canadians, I think the Canadian economy is generally more sound than the American economy. That's not just my opinion. That's a lot of people's opinion. But Canadians are very indebted. And I still wonder whether it's not better to own whatever small shack you own than be entirely indebted to somebody else for some house that you couldn't.
I keep hearing about good debt. You know, oh, a mortgage is good debt, and I keep thinking it doesn't sound like good debt to me.
It's good debt if it's matched to your ability to pay for it. Look, there's a reason there's a mortgage, because if we all had to pay cash full up for a house, nobody would own a house before they're 80, unless you're independently wealthy. Right. But it doesn't mean you should spend everything you've got on it. Be reasonable. Take those poor man's roses, because they're yours. You can own them.
Listen to Patsy. She knows. There's the book right there, How to Speak Money, the language and the knowledge you need now. Good to see you, man.
You too.
Ali Velshi, everybody. We'll be right back.